Welcome back, everybody. Time for some more End of a New Beginning as the Kingdom of Prussia. It's June of 1858. If you didn't see episode 1 of this series, there's a link in the description below. Also, I've made some updates to the Patreon tiers, the rewards. I'm going to be adding further rewards in the next few days. But one of the things I wanted to let you know about is that if you are at the first lieutenant rank or above as a supporter, you are now a member of my war cabinet. And as a part of the war cabinet, this was suggested by a viewer. From time to time, and I'm going to try to do this as often as possible, I'm going to post questions specifically for the War Cabinet on Patreon. You'll get a notification for those things if you're at First Lieutenant or above. And I'm going to post poll questions asking for your input into the direction that I go with my decision. So, for example, I might say, should I pursue a policy of alliance with the United Kingdom or with Russia? And I might post that as a poll question to the War Cabinet to get your input, and you'll have a say in the direction we go with this game. Should I declare war on such and such a nation in this game? Should I build more of this kind of ship? Those kinds of things. So you'll have a lot more say into what's going on in things. You can also do that through the comment section below, but then you're kind of on your own. This way, it's a collective voice. So if you want to support, I believe, First Lieutenant's $5 a month. So it doesn't cost much to be a supporter in that way, but it's tremendously helpful, especially right now because ad revenue is way down on YouTube, which is why you're seeing so many more ads on people's videos, because YouTube's throwing a bunch more ads on there to make up for that lost revenue. And I never made that much to begin with, and especially since it looks like my work is largely going to not happen this fall with schools unsure about what they're doing. Everything you can do to support me is very, very helpful. So let's dive into this. It's episode 2. It's 1858. Eventually, obviously, the goal that we're working toward is going to be the wars of unification that are going to be taking place as Prussia as we seek to unite the Empire of Germany. But we're a little ways off from that right now. So right now, it's just about building our stability, building our infrastructure, getting our military built the way I want it to be, which means generating as many experience points as possible so that I can reform the military with the units that I'd like it to have. But other than that, right now, there's not a lot going on. So for now, we're mostly going to be focusing on this particular tree right here. We'll probably eventually get into a little more of the foreign policy aspect of things. Although, you know what, right here, I'm looking at this. Yeah, we can't hit any of these until after 1860. So mainly it's about the economy right now. And a lot of these are going to give me some construction speed bonuses, which are going to be really helpful moving forward. Right now, as I look at my military, everybody has different philosophies on building their divisions, but I like to have a combat width of 20. So the combat width, if you're not familiar with how this works, you can read it right there. It tells you how much room this division takes up in combat. You've only got so much width in an attack or a defense. So the lower the amount of combat width, the more divisions can fit on the line. So the wider these are, the more you can do with one single division. So I don't necessarily want to build the number of divisions I have, but I do want to make the combat width of my available divisions a higher number. Eventually, I want to get up to 20. So for example, if a combat has a total width of 80, you could fit 4 divisions with the width of 20. So in order to do that, we're going to start building up the composition of these divisions. Right now, they're actually infantry regiments. We'll probably have to rename that at some point if we're able to do that. But we're going to build this up to a full division. And that's going to require adding new infantry battalions. Eventually, we're going to start adding cannon to that, but we're not going to do that quite yet. For now, we're just going to add some more line infantry. It takes 5 experience to add each one. So adding 2 is going to get my combat width to a 10. And that's going to require a bunch of new reinforcements, a bunch of new equipment that I currently haven't produced. So we'll start working on that. The Kunig Brewery. Theodor Kunig has recently seen A large success with this brewery, the Kunig Brewery, opened just a few days ago in Duisburg. They brew quality beer in the Pilsner style. I'm not sure what that has to do with what's going on in the world, but that's pretty cool that they show me that. So, in case you're wondering, König actually is the German word for king, I believe. So, it's interesting to see how there are these correlations with last names. So, for example, my great grandmother's maiden name was Gerhardt, which is the German version of Garrett. Jaeger in German is hunter in English. So you have a lot of those kinds of things, and those happen in different languages. I believe Bianco, which is an Italian name, I think means white in English. And a lot of folks, when they would come to America as immigrants, they would anglicize their names and change it from the foreign sounding one. Delegates from Moldavia have arrived complaining about the Ottomans ignoring of accusations of vote rigging. How shall we respond? Back the call. All right, let's put some pressure on the Ottomans. By this point in history, the Ottoman Empire, which had been incredibly powerful for centuries, was beginning to decline. And by the turn of the century, by 1900, Ottoman Empire was in really bad shape, and they started losing these Balkan wars that were happening. So let's take a look here. Research. So we're in 1858. So all of these here are behind. So we certainly need to get those caught up. Remember, right now, everything I'm doing is all about infrastructure, building up our production abilities, things like that. I don't really need to do too much as far as helping the military at the moment. Let's take a look at engineering for a second. Eventually, we are going to work on the German Navy. That's something I'm definitely thinking I'm going to diverge from history on. I want to have a Navy that can rival someone like the British, which I know is something that the German Empire tried to do. They just didn't necessarily succeed in that. Today, the Kingdom of Bavaria announced that from now on it wants to play a bigger role in the concert of Europe and find its place in it. Seeing how it is the biggest and most influential German middle state, some think that Bavaria's wish to be noticed by others could be successful, provided they take part in international politics, like the big powers do. Others, however, think that this wish is merely that, noting that the Kingdom of Bavaria never before had any interest in being part of the concert. While small countries like some other German middle states seemingly want Bavaria to succeed in becoming more important, the main and long-established powers in Europe, mainly France, Prussia, and Austria, would like Bavaria to stay in its current position. I would like Bavaria to become part of what I'm doing. So some of these are not currently available to me as options. Well, let's see here. Reconstituting the Zoll Parliament. I'm just looking to see what this allows me to do. The Berlin-Anhalt Railway is not available right now because we don't control the necessary cities for that. Let's do this. It's going to give me 100 legislative power. I've got 512 right now, so we ought to probably be looking at things that we might be able to change or add some new political advisors. What do we have for political advisors right now? There's a traditional conservative, railroad tycoon, construction speed on infrastructure. That's not really going to help right now. Research speed 2%. Werner von Siemens. All right, let's do that. Let's get that research speed bonus. What else do we have? Civilian factory construction speed 5% bonus. That's also really helpful because that's what I'm primarily doing right now. And that actually moved that construction up by about 2 weeks. So that was a little bit helpful. I'm going to go ahead and push for a change in our research funding. Right now we're at private ventures only. Let's see if we can move all the way and be ambitious and go all the way for regular state sponsorship. So we're going to go ahead and push for that vote in a month. I don't know if I'm being too ambitious here. Let's go ahead and take a look and see whether that's even going to be possible. Oh, yeah. I got a little too ambitious. Only 71 votes for it. I'm not even going to try. I'm not going to waste my energy trying to make that happen. We'll push for a smaller maybe just incremental with this one, because we've only got 17.8% of the centrists and only 31% of traditional conservatives. I don't think we're going to win enough over. As I look at this, I'm not entirely sure if this has even been fleshed out by the developers yet. Remember, this is still being built daily, so there's a long way to go. I don't see, as I hover over these different research funding options, anything being mentioned about the impact that it has. So it may be it's just not showing that, but it does have an impact, or maybe it just doesn't yet. So maybe it's not worth my time to push for that yet. We're about to finish another national focus. So that, honestly, these things are only giving me legislative power and not much else. I think I want to focus on things that are going to give me immediate impact on my economy. So let's talk about history for just a minute. We've got Karl Anton von Hohenzollern, who served historically as the Prime Minister of Prussia. He actually ruled a small principality of his own, which he abdicated from in favor of his cousin, who eventually became the Kaiser. But his son, Karl's son, became Carol I, the king of Romania, who ruled Romania for 40 years. And I believe another one of his sons was actually offered the throne of Spain, which was one of the events that precipitated the Franco-Prussian War. So he was very active in Prussian politics at this time, a major figure that you don't hear about a whole lot. And he just gave a speech. Look at that. But definitely had an impact on the events of European history at this time. So let's go ahead and get caught up on our research. So we've got innovative thinking, which is taking a long, long time, but that's going to give me an Army experience bonus once it happens. Even though I've got these exercises going on, they're happening really, really slowly. It takes a long time to build any kind of experience. I'm looking at my economy, and right now I'm on early mobilization. I'm actually going to switch to civilian economy because what that's going to do is it's going to give me a 10% additional bonus to civilian factory construction speed, which would be really helpful right now. Let's go ahead and build the Spandau Arsenal. So these are all decisions that I'm making that are hopefully impacting my economy. But what they're doing down here is they're actually doing this. And you have to complete certain tasks. So, for example, when I achieved the one that has to do with Berlin civilian industry, you can see here that then I've got to hurry up and get to civilian industry built in Berlin, or else I take a big hit on legislative power and stability. But if I do achieve it, then I get a new building slot, and I either gain a base stability of 2% or I gain manpower. So the same thing is going to be true with this mill. You get, looks like, about 5 years to complete these tasks. So let's go ahead back into our parliament and take a look at the economic mobilization law. And we're going to go ahead and push to go to a civilian economy. Let's vote for that reform in a month. Hopefully, since it's an incremental step, that should happen without too much trouble. Yeah, we've got 209 votes for that. That's going to pass easily. Wrought iron's about to be complete as well. Oh, this will give us a population bonus right here. Copper salt pesticides. I think we're just about caught up on this one. There's nothing to be gained by going after that. Let's look at mechanical engineering. Excellent. There's a bonus to construction speed. We need all those bonuses we can get because it takes forever with only 9 civilian factories to even build one civilian factory. Right now we're still looking at April 15th to complete that one. Easily passed the Civilian Act of 1859. So let's see, that was April 15th to get that done. Oh, we actually lost 2 civilian factories from what we were doing because of the change. So that actually bumped it back by 3 days. That did me no good whatsoever because additional civilian factories are needed to meet the needs of a civilian population. So that didn't go the way that I hoped it would because now we're using additional factories for the consumer goods. Okay, that was an unintended consequence of that. So now I'm wondering if we might not be better off to go in the opposite direction with economic mobilization, and not only go to early mobilization, and maybe go to partial mobilization. I'll have to think about that. So let's go ahead back to economic mobilization law, and we're going to go ahead and vote for this reform to go back to early mobilization. I don't know what the Parliament's going to think of that, but we'll find out. And it looks like we're barely hanging on to enough votes for this. So let's go ahead and make a speech in Parliament. That seems to be a nice generic way to make that happen. And while we're waiting for that to happen, there's another national focus completed. And I'm going to pose my first question to the War Cabinet over on Patreon. And by the time this video is uploaded, I will go ahead and post that question on there. But I won't do it much before because it won't make a lot of sense to you guys before that. So my question is going to be this. Once we get past 1860, these foreign policy options are going to open up. And we've got mutually exclusive options here. Well, these aren't the foreign policy. These are the internal policies. Foreign policy opened up already. So here's my question. We're going to talk about policy toward Britain. Do we want to go cooperation with England, which is going to give us some bonuses to legislative power, but is also going to give them bonuses to legislative power? Now, remember, the UK, Britain, is currently the most powerful nation on Earth by far. Let me show you that. You can see their power projections 1489. They've got 211 ships in their navy, 31 divisions in the army, 41 factories. So they're ahead of me, and actually Austria's kind of gained on me too. I'm currently sitting in 5th. Obviously, that's going to change when we start consolidating Germany. But do we cooperate with the UK? And then we make colonial treaties. These are all going to help with stability and building legislative power, or a rivalry, which means we're going to have our opinion go down with them. We're going to actually mess up their stability. And then eventually we get bonuses to naval doctrine by rivalry with them. So let me know. Cooperation with England, rivalry with England. I'll pose that to the cabinet, and whatever you guys decide, that's what we'll go with. There's currently 11 people that are, well, actually there's more than 11 because there's 11 at the first lieutenant rank. There's several more. So I think there's probably close to 20 people that are currently in that war cabinet, but that's open to anybody who wants to. We'll pose that question for the next episode. All right, looks like our speech did push enough votes in our direction. So we're back to where we were before. With all of that, our fickle parliament has reversed its earlier decision. Let's go ahead and take a look after we get these early thermodynamics theories. There's a research speed bonus. Let's take a look now at where we're at on construction. It's such a slow process getting these factories going. With Danzig is where we're working on now. It's going to be April of 1860. So it's taken the better part of a year to build each factory. Really slow going, but it'll pay off in the long run. So let's talk a little bit more about history here. You can see here the House of Hanover, the Kingdom of Hanover. That was actually in a personal union with the United Kingdom for quite a while. When King George I became king in the United Kingdom, he was actually the King of Hanover. He was a German by all intents and purposes. I mean, he didn't speak English. He'd never set foot in England. And for the most part, during his reign, he didn't really spend much time in England, and he's actually buried in Hanover. So where are we at on this? So what happened was that in the UK, the House of Stuart reigned until Queen Anne. When Queen Anne passed away after having something well over a dozen children, but none of whom survived to adulthood to get married and produce heirs of their own, the next in line to the throne, who was not a Catholic, because Catholics were barred from the succession by law, was Queen Anne's distant cousin, Sophia, the Electress of Hanover. Well, she died just before Anne did, which meant that her son, Georg, became King George I of the United Kingdom. So that went on for a while. George the First, George the Second, George the Third. George IV, William IV were all kings of England who were also kings of Hanover. Well, the laws and succession laws in Hanover do not allow for that to pass to a female. So when Queen Victoria became queen in the United Kingdom, she was the niece of King William IV. The Kingdom of Hanover then passed to the next male line relative, and so now it's King Georg V is the King of Hanover, but he is, of course, a cousin to Queen Victoria, like all of the rulers in Europe were related to Victoria at that time. Well, this is kind of interesting. We are really, really close to catching up to the Austrian Empire and taking over fourth place as a great power in the world. You can see we're a parliamentary monarchy, unlike the absolute monarchy of the Austrian Empire, but that's going to change at some point. I'm going to see if I can pursue some policies that will increase our population. I'm getting a little nervous about some of these national focuses that I'm choosing because I'm building quite the backlog of tasks I'm going to have to complete. And Brandenburg getting up to 4 military industry makes me a little nervous because I don't know how many we currently have there. Let's go ahead and take a look in the construction area here. So I don't know what Brandenburg has currently. Looks like we've got 3 already, so we only need to add 1 more. I guess that's not too bad. So if you take a look here at the division designer, if we add 1 unit of cannon artillery, look at the changes to the combat stats. Soft attack goes from 53 to 72. Defense goes from 78 to 100. Breakthrough goes from 11 to 14. So really just massive improvements. Organization goes down, which is a little bit concerning. But overall, just 1 unit of cannon artillery adds massive amounts of strength to each of our divisions, which is definitely worth it. So we're going to go ahead and add that. That's going to bring the combat width to 13. I'm actually thinking that even adding another one, although eventually what we really want is howitzers. And you can see here, what's the difference? Defense is a little higher. Soft attack is higher, but I don't think we have howitzers available to us right now. But we'll add another unit of cannon artillery. That's going to really build up those divisions significantly. Oh, I guess we do have howitzers available to us. Right here is the rifled howitzer. But I guess for now we're going to go with the smoothbore gun and go ahead and research that. But we'll get the howitzers down the road at some point once we have some more experience points. We're almost to 1860. And when we hit 1860, that's going to unlock some new things for us to consider. Primarily right here, our internal politics. And I think we're going to go down this route, which is going to basically give the power to the army. Utah has declared independence from the United States. Brigham Young, also referred to as the American Moses, had refused an offer from President Buchanan to settle the Utah War, and he quickly assembled a government to support an independent Utah. He, along with his ministers, declared the theocracy of Deseret to be an independent nation. It is to be a temporary theocratic dictatorship with elections expected to be held if the state can stay an independent nation. It's expected the United States will react to this new state with a declaration of war. We are now into January of 1860, which means we are now able to choose this path that I believe is probably going to take us toward unification, toward the wars that'll happen, whether it's the war with Austria, war with Denmark, war with France eventually. And of course, the U.S. has just declared war on the theocracy of Deseret, which you can see right here. Oh, this is cool. We've got a decision here that we can add. For 80 days, we're going to use 4 civilian factories, but when that's done, it's going to add 10 steel production in Rhineland. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we just had another national focus completed, one that was not something we were working on. Where was that? That was one of the ones that wasn't currently available to me. It was right here. So I wonder if that now means, no, we're not going to be able to do these other ones quite yet. But this one here actually dropped my political stability, hurt my legislative power gain, hurt my weekly manpower, hurt my stability, hurt my war support. So that's what's happening right now. There's a crisis looming due to our current constitutional layout, and we need to deal with it. I don't see a way to specifically deal with it. I guess this is just going to be stuff that happens on its own. But eventually we get to Prime Minister Bismarck, and if we choose that, then that opens up some of these other trees for us. Knowing that war is coming in a few years, I think it's probably time to start doing some research that's going to start upgrading the military. So let's look at those options that are available to us. And there's a lot that go all the way down here. Opposition returns. That's just because our political stability dropped a little bit. All right, so let's start with the M1858 rifle. All right, we've got a new political action available to us here. The second Eisenach Declaration. And what that's going to do is going to build up our relations with the German minor states. And that's obviously a first step toward eventual unification. So what we're going to do to finish up this episode here is we'll go ahead and finish our current national focus, which has just a couple of days to go. We're also building that steel production, the Rhenish steel, which is almost complete as well. And then I think we'll wrap things up. We're going to pose the question to the War Cabinet about our relations with the United Kingdom. Do we pursue cooperation, or do we pursue rivalry with that? And we'll probably try to do that at least once with every episode. And I will follow the will of the cabinet on those decisions that happen. So that'll be policy toward Britain. Will be the first one that we pursue there. Let's go ahead and look over here at where we're at, because now we have another decision to make. Do we go Kriegsminister Albrecht von Roon, or do we go Manteufel's reform of the cabinet? I think we'll do this one, the reform of the cabinet for now. Let me see what the option. It doesn't seem. Oh, he just gets recruited for our military command structure, so that's not necessarily a big deal. I'm just looking at all of these options. If I go this route, I think, is that still available? Parliament candidate? No, I guess not. We can choose any of these. Okay, so it didn't matter which way we went with this one. We can still choose any of these. Stronger parliamentary control, parliament candidate. All right, we'll go with the reform of the cabinet. So we'll do that. That'll be the last thing we do for this episode, is we'll see how that shakes out. So we completed the Rhenish steel decision, which now frees up these 4 factories back to finish the one in Danzig. Now, Rhenish steel, it didn't actually give me steel production. What it actually gave me was an increase in raw iron production, which will allow me then to build additional steel. There's a cotton farm added. So I'm thinking that once we complete this factory in Danzig, I'm wondering about our trade situation, because you can see there's certain things we still don't produce enough of, which is wood for one, fabric is another, and of course we're still not producing enough raw iron. We are, however, now producing enough of cotton. So I'm thinking maybe the way to go is to build some things, because civilian industry, it takes 18,000 to build one of those. Building things like a steel mill, that takes 14,000. That's not really very helpful either. A logging camp, though, is only 9,000. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts about that. Should I be building other things besides just the civilian factories, or should I keep working on that? Because I feel like building up those civilian factories is going to be the best thing for me long term. But I don't know. The United States of America has defeated the theocracy of Deseret in battle. No surprise there that Utah was not able to hold against the United States. They are, however, headed towards civil war unless they make a different decision. This is 1860, which means, so ends the Mormon experiment, which means that Abraham Lincoln's election is possible coming in November. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Let's take a look here at the ledger. We're starting to put a little distance between us and the Austrians as far as power goes. We're starting to move ahead of them, partially because of population. Our number of factories is up to 29, which is certainly better than the 17 that they have. Okay, our reforming of the cabinet is coming. There it is. So that gives me a legislative power boost. And now, I guess we need to do all of these. Okay, no, one of the following. That's it. For this, we need both of the following. So we are going to need to choose. I was all worried about choosing one or the other, but we actually need to do both. So we'll wrap it up right there. It's June of 1860. We got through 2 years of the game that time around. It's going to get interesting. We are not far off from the wars of unification beginning. So it's going to be important for me to start strengthening the military so that we're able to take on Austria, because I'm guessing that'll be the first one of those. But let me know your thoughts. War Cabinet, head on over to Patreon and vote on our policy toward the United Kingdom. And we'll see you again in a couple days with another video. Thanks for watching.